Today's guest is Leisa Reid, known as the Speaking Strategy Mentor and the founder of Get Speaking Gigs Now and CEO of the International Speaker Network. After delivering more than 600 talks and authoring 9 books, Leisa helps business owners use speaking as a serious revenue pathway. Her work helps experts get booked, stay booked, and attract clients without feeling perfect, pushy, or salesy. Today, we're talking about brilliance hoarding, speakers kryptonite, and why the message you're sitting on may be the thing someone else needs to hear. Thank you so much for joining me, Leisa. I'm excited to have you.
Oh, I'm so excited to have this conversation, Chrissy.
I get this from pretty much every client. They want to speak more. They want to be on bigger stages. And I see it in a lot of these speaking groups on Facebook, like, how do we get speaking gigs? And one of the things that I mentioned in the intro was brilliance hoarding. I want to start there because I think you're going to crack something open with that because a lot of people are scared of giving too much away. What's brilliance hoarding?
Yeah, brilliance hoarding comes in lots of different forms, or like I'll refer to them as brilliance barriers. And sometimes it's that old fear of public speaking, habitual fear of public speaking that we just kind of go, oh, I'm afraid of that because we decided a long time ago we never wanted to do it. And then we're an adult and we have expertise to share, and yet we're still using that old story. So it's like sometimes let's reconcile that conversation. Let's regroup. Does that still fit? Why would I be scared? Why was I scared in the past? Oh, well, it made sense that I was scared when they called me up to the board and had me do a problem that I don't know how to solve, or read out loud when maybe that wasn't your strong suit, or whatever. There's many reasons why we could have that distaste for quote unquote public speaking. But then as we get to be adults and experts, now it's like, well, that doesn't really fit. You actually have something of value to share. You have problems that you have solutions for, and people can benefit from your knowledge. Then that's a different conversation. Like, oh, well, we can easily work on that. But I get what you're saying about people being scared that they're going to share too much, or like all the gold, all the juice, and all the stuff. Honestly, if you're speaking for a half hour or an hour, do you really think the whole audience is going to get everything that you've ever learned of your decades of knowledge and expertise? No, you're there. Even if you share like your best stuff, which, is definitely recommended, they're still going to have questions. They're still going to need to process through. They're still going to need more detailed support.
100%. And I will speak to the first part of what you said with regard to like my own experience. I don't have a problem speaking, but I still wasn't putting myself out there. And I had to really examine, hey, if I'm not really scared of public speaking, why am I not out there more? And overall, it was just the fear of visibility. And, it was the fear of actually success. Like, am I going to be able to handle it if I've got all these speaking gigs coming at me? And it was really interesting. And I think I hear that from a lot of women, that they're afraid of that visibility for one reason or another.
Yeah, I often would refer to it as that speaker's kryptonite, because it's like you could still be confident as a speaker, determined, knowledgeable, successful, consistent, like all the things that are required as an entrepreneur. Like we have to, really show up, and still have some resistance to getting on stage for whatever reason. And speaker's kryptonite, in my world, it sounds really different to each person, because it could be like, well, what if I get too much business? Kind of what you're saying. What if I can't handle that kind of growth? Or it could be so many things, but these are common ones of like, I don't know who would have me on stage. Like, why would they even want me there? Or what would I have to do? Or who would I call? So there's sometimes this lack of direction. And so then we don't know where to put that energy. There's also fear of sales. Like, what if nobody buys my stuff? What if I never get a client? What if it doesn't work? That kind of fear. Or there's a fear of like, I don't know enough. Like, I need more certifications. I need to write a book. I need to have a speaker reel. I need to have, I should do this. I should do that. And who am I to, and the good news is with speaking, it's kind of a level playing field. it's basically a game of who's the most courageous to put themselves out there. And I say, if you are just 1 degree more courageous than your competition, you're in, right? A lot of people are going to be too chicken to get up there and put themselves, in that limelight because it is vulnerable. I'm not going to say, oh, it's, no big deal. And why should you be scared? Yeah, it's vulnerable being up on stage by yourself. You are the lone wolf out there without your posse, right? And so you do need to have your ducks in a row. But once you determine like, oh, this is the talk that I'm going to give and this is the offer and I'm in front of the right people and I can really help and it becomes more about your mission than about your ego, then all of a sudden it gets a lot easier.
Yeah, I love that you pointed out it's more about the mission than the ego. And that speaks right to your brilliance hoarding topic as well, because this is something I stress with women all the time, that your message is meant for someone. There is somebody out there who has maybe heard similar things, but it just hasn't resonated until they hear your particular story, your way of telling your message, and it just clicks. I
So
mean, if
true.
we can all think about it, we've heard the same topics from different people, but some of them just land and some of them you're like, okay.
Yeah. And that's why I say like the stage is really a magnet. It should be ideally a magnet for the people who are your ideal prospective clients, especially even like your high ticket clients or 4 and 5 figure level clients. You don't have to be anybody else. In fact, if you're trying to be someone else, like you're trying to be my style or Chrissy's style, you're going to attract people who may not be your ideal client. So the good news is you get to be you, and your humor, your intellect, your delivery, your um, all expertise, all those things are going to help really you attract that ideal person for you. And so that's a part of it too that's a little scary sometimes. So I had a client who was struggling with that perfection, or I call it perfectionitis, where she was really trying to say exactly the right words. So she would have herself all in knots about saying the right words and are her notes available and can she read her notes and reference her notes from stage? And I'm like, girl, you have this in you. As we started working together, I'm like, by doing that, you're diluting your personality. She's really funny. She's sharp. She knows her stuff. So it was just that trust, being able to trust that I'm enough. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough and doggone it, people like me, right? Like, and trusting that to let go of the notes, embody, and I'm not saying go wing it. I'm not saying that, but you know your stuff. Once we've planned it out, you've practiced, and then she was able to go from 3 speaking engagements a year to 36 speaking engagements a year.
Gosh.
But more than that, I mean, yeah, because she was willing to like, okay, well, now this is fun. It's not so anxiety ridden. This is like, I could do this. I could be goofy and I could lead a room and be myself and attract clients into her mastermind and her coaching programs and her community. It was like, okay, now we can just have that faucet turned on all the time and you don't have to have that stress.
I love it. So what did she do to get started? Did she start on virtual? Did she start, how did she start to like get that faucet going?
Yeah, it's a combination, and I don't mind either way. When I work with a client, we actually come up with a customized speaking strategy for that person because some people are going to really thrive with the virtual setting. It depends on how you attract your clients and what your clients, how they're working with you. Like if it's a physical location, you need piece of people in your local community and they need to physically come in, then virtual is probably not going to be the best strategy unless it's a local virtual group. But if you can help clients all over the country or the world, and you help them virtually, virtual is a great place to go. It's, saves you a ton of time, saves you a lot of energy, and we can work with you so that you can, communicate effectively using the chat and still attract those high ticket clients. Literally from a virtual presentation. So just kind of depends on the person and what they're trying to do.
Yeah. And, you were talking about the virtual aspect, and, a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to sit here and talk like this in a virtual setting. And,
Don't do that.
and so there are ways to still engage with the audience.
Absolutely.
And I want to know if you know this term. I saw it and my husband thought it was hilarious. It's called the booby box.
No, tell me about that.
Staying within the booby box. I have a tendency to definitely not, because I'm rather animated. And but it's, I guess maybe because I'm down in the South, we have a lot of pageants, and it came from the pageant world, staying in your booby box.
Oh, that's
But
funny. Yeah.
yeah, so I've seen that as some advice for speakers on the virtual setting as well, is to stay within the booby.
There are definitely learning curves. And I'll tell you, Chrissy, when I first started speaking back in 2013, most of my talks were in person. And I was, at that time, my strategy was an in-person workshop. And so I stayed within about a 50-mile radius of that location because it made
Nice.
sense. It was like going to be less barriers for entry. But then COVID hit everybody. And in 2020, I had several bookings on the calendar for 2020 that were going to be in person that we needed to shift. So from March to December 2020, I booked about 50 virtual speaking engagements.
Wow.
And this was when people were just figuring out their Zoom account. They didn't know how to host them. I mean, this, just happened to everybody. I was already used to coaching on Zoom, so that wasn't an issue. I said, I'll host the meeting for you. No problem. I'll set that up because, people just were still learning. And so I had to learn really quickly too, like, okay, what's different? How do we, maximize the chat? How do we have those links ready? And then had to learn again when things opened back up in person. I was like, oh yeah, there's no chat. There's no links in the chat. What do I do? And what did I used to do? And now we're using QR codes. And so as an entrepreneur, there's always going to be things we're learning that we didn't know before, or innovations that happen. And, but that's all learnable. It's easy. And yeah, you don't want to be a boring speaker, virtual or in person. I have seen people, I don't know if you've seen this, where they're speaking virtually and I can tell that they're reading,
Oh,
even though they sound, they might sound like a good reader. It's still a certain tonality that happens when you're
yeah.
reading versus when you're speaking authentically. And I just want to encourage everyone, please don't do that.
Yeah, like 100%. I mean, it's like what I mentioned before we came actually on, I have my questions ready. I probably won't even get to them, but I do have, so I am
Sure.
prepared, but I know that your information. I know my information. We're just going to have a good conversation. And even if you're speaking, you can have like a little bullet point somewhere to just remind you what you're going to talk about.
Absolutely. And you can still use slides. People have opinions about that. And again, I always say it depends. It depends on how you're using the slides, what's in the slides. You don't want the slides to be your whole entire presentation. I always say it's like your accessory. Like, you can go out of the house without your bracelet on, but you're not going to go out without your shirt and pants on. So you are the outfit and the slides are your accessories.
That's right. Yeah, I love that. People obsess over slides and how many do I have? What should be on them? Is this too much? Is this too little? And like, we need to not worry about being perfect. I know that's been my crux a lot of times, is the perfection aspect of it. And I was at a speaking event last night where one of our clients was speaking, and she had her notes and she was like, this is a brand new speech. And I was like, oh gosh, brand new speech. Wait, what? But she knows her material.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to keep it very engaging because it was about 60 to 70 people. So it was a smaller, more intimate environment. So being polished with all the slides might have been too much. Instead, she kept it really not conversational as in necessarily back and forth, but definitely felt like she wasn't talking at them. And she was
Yes.
just, storytelling around the fire. And it was very well received.
Yeah. And people will remember that much more than you saying the most perfect words with the most perfect slides or the most beautiful slides. They don't really care have you ever left a presentation going, wow, those slides were so beautiful? Like, that's not the point. It's not supposed to be, it's kind of like when you see a movie and you can tell someone's acting. I shouldn't be able to tell that you're acting. I should be just in the movie with you. And it's the same thing with speaking. So we want to just be real, connect with people. They're there, whether that's in person or virtual. They're still human beings who are like, really just want to know, is this going to help me? Am I engaged with this? Like, am I willing to go on this journey? Do I relate to this person? Is what they're talking about relatable to me? Like, that's what audience members are going to want. That's what humans want.
Yeah. Well, and something I often point out to people, like even our guests when they go on podcasts, other people's podcasts and things like that is, don't worry about making everyone who hears it like, it's not perfect for everyone, but it's going to land to the people it's meant to land to.
Yes.
And just focus on those people.
Yeah. And you also aren't a mind reader. We have to remind ourselves we're not mind readers. Someone could be looking in the audience, virtual or otherwise in person. They could be looking totally checked out. They could look upset about something, but we don't actually know. That still could be your ideal client. I've had, back when I first started speaking, I thought, oh, the person who's engaging the most and raising their hand and sitting up front, that's my ideal client. That person could walk right. This happened to me once. I had a woman in the audience. She's like so engaged. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's probably going to sign up for my thing that I'm offering. She didn't. She walked right out the door. The lady in the back who never said a word, I didn't even notice her, comes up, hands me her credit card. I was like, okay, and became a client for years and brought her husband and spent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So you just don't know.
That's amazing. Wow. Nice. So now everybody's going to be looking for the quiet person in the back.
Yeah. And it might not be that person too. So you never know. Those type of lessons taught me just to not judge. I had another scenario where, and I live in Orange County, California, which is, a nice area I'm very blessed to live here. And there was one week where I had 2 presentations, 2 speaking engagements, and one was private. Well, they were both private, but one was at a home, and it was a team of salespeople, like sales leaders. And the other was in front of a nonprofit organization. And to qualify to be in that organization, you had to donate $1,000 a year to this nonprofit. That was kind of the entry point. And great, no problem. Same presentation. I go to the one at the home, and I pull in, and I'm like, oh, this looks like a trailer park. It was a trailer park, and I was literally in a double wide trailer. And I swear to God. And I thought, okay, well, whatever. I'm here. This is it. And it was like 10
You're like, I blocked out the time. Might as well go in.
10 women in the room or something like that. It was a small, intimate setting. And then the other one was at a private club, like very high end valet parking, the whole thing. You can't get in if you're not a member type of thing. Room full of about 50, 60 women. In the double wide trailer scenario, 3 of the women signed up for my, immediate offer. And again, went on, spent tens of thousands of dollars. Then Thursday comes and I go to the private club and I had one woman out of that whole room sign up. She spent tens of thousands of dollars too, but it was such a great experience because I don't judge. I don't know. I'm there to deliver the message. And sometimes I heard you say earlier about like people wanting to get on bigger stages. Sometimes bigger stages don't mean bigger money. It doesn't always translate that way. But it's like, who's in the room who really needs to hear what you have to say?
I love that. Yes, exactly. I mean, I hear this a lot because, we don't necessarily book people to speak a lot. That's not the main part of what we do, but we do book people on podcasts. And one time we had this client and they said, well, I don't want to be on a podcast if they don't have 1 million listeners. And I was like, okay, well, then we have 2 to choose from.
You're like, maybe you could open your expectations.
I know. It's like, but wait, wouldn't you rather have 100 ideal listeners versus 100,000 and maybe there's only one ideal listener. Like, come on.
Yeah. And you have to, get to the point where you're making those kind of decisions. I guess, yeah, I agree that you don't ever know exactly who's going to be in the room. And so I hear people say that a lot. Oh, I want to be on bigger stages. I'm like, well, what does that mean? What do you really want? You want clients. You want clients. That's what you want. It's not, I don't think it's about being on the bigger stage. It's about what kind of impact are you trying to make? And I'm not saying bigger stages is bad. I'm just saying you have to be aware of what you're doing with your business and does it make sense? I've seen sometimes people get lured by opportunities like, oh, you'll be on stage with this person or you'll be sharing the stage with this famous person. What I also know about sometimes those opportunities, that famous person has already grabbed all the clients in the room because of their celebrity. So you could also just be the only speaker, which is also really nice. So there's these balancing act of what are you choosing and why, and being really conscious about what the actual goal is.
I love the conscious aspect. And I love how you put together a custom plan for each person, because like you said, it doesn't always mean a virtual stage makes sense or a bigger stage makes
Absolutely.
sense. So I love
Yeah.
that you brought that up. Something I personally have dealt with is the performative aspect. So I have been to many events before with big stages, and some of the speakers just seemed so performative that I was really turned off. And then I would see some that just seemed like I'm having a conversation with a friend, and I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I can do that, but the I can't be performative like that. What do you say to women who might be experiencing that same like fear of being performative or looking performative?
I think the performative piece comes when we have a talk that we've memorized and it's like perfected versus, oh, this is my outline. I'm going to hit these points. I'm going to tell this story, but it's not exactly word for word the same. It's not memorized. I call it embodied. Like you want to embody your message and be clear, like, this is the path we're going to go on. I'm going to get you there safely. But there's still this connectedness. And when we're so not worried, but like when we're memorizing something, it's almost like a disconnect of the audience, which is probably what you felt. They were like really making sure that their talk was, and the movements were just so, and they raised their hand at this point and walked to the other side of the stage at that point. And then that feels memorized, and that's where the disconnect can happen. You can still say the same kind of things or the same stories or the same points. But, again, I've given like a certain talk I gave hundreds of times. And so each time I had to like, how can I make this feel like it's the very first time that I gave it and not memorized and not performative? And so I would shift examples. Like if I was speaking to realtors, I would talk about your listings and your buyers and your sellers and, those kind of use these types of phrases. But I could give the same exact presentation to a group of nonprofit professionals. And then I would dress a little different for those two audiences, but I would use nonprofit type of examples or engage them in a more calmer way. Realtors are going to want, fast, show me the money, like get to the point, lady. So very different audiences.
I love that you're bringing up that you're, same talk, but you're tweaking it for the particular audience. So I love that. I want to talk too about getting the speaking gigs. That seems to be the number one question I see anywhere. And women are like, they're just not out there. Nobody's doing it. I'm like, they're everywhere.
Everywhere. I know. I tell you, when you work with me, all the blinders are going to come off. Like I was just on a call with a client the other day, and she's at the beginning of her speaking journey, and we're getting her talk created and getting her ideal audience figured out. And she speaks to women. She speaks to Christian groups. That's not her only place she could speak, but that's really important to her. So I said, okay, let's take a look. And just in your area, let's take a look. How many Christian churches are there in this area? 1,200. Okay. I mean, even if it was only 200, like, is that enough churches for you to speak at? Yes, that is definitely enough churches. And that's just like one little example of who she could feasibly speak to. And she was like, oh my gosh, I could speak to so many different places and groups. And it there's an abundance. But I think because I get that asked too, well, how would I get booked? Where would I go? What would I start with? And I'm like, well, that's why we have a strategy for creating your talk, number one. So you know, okay, this is my message. I'm going to put my stake in the ground. And then where does this talk fit? Oh, these places. And you want to really be clear. What's that ideal scenario look like? Because then you can start not just cold. I mean, people do a lot of cold outreach. That's not my favorite thing to do. In fact, I'm a warm outreach kind of a gal, and cold outreach is just a soul sucking activity. So like in the International Speaker Network, we try to like, can we eliminate the cold outreach? Can we just make like warm introductions?
Love
But
that.
how do you get a warm introduction? You need to know what to ask for. Like, Chrissy, I speak to women's business groups, professional groups that invite outside speakers. Do you know anyone? Like, I need to know how to get that referral, what I'm looking for. I need to train people around me to go, oh, we've got this great speaker, Leisa Reid. She could come in and speak. And then it starts to snowball. And then you're getting speaking engagements all the time.
100%. That's where relationships are so important, and building just not necessarily with an agenda, just building relationships in general. We've got a book tour going on right now, and we've booked signings in Ohio and Atlanta. Guess what? Two people in my network that I meet with every single week. One lives in Ohio, one lives in Atlanta. So I said, hey, where can she speak? Easy peasy.
Easy, easy. I know it's sometimes we think like there's this answer out there, and I'm like, well, the answer's probably in your network. And I joke around, like, I'll say, what's your Rolodex look like? For people who are old enough to know what a Rolodex is, like now we have really big Rolodexes because we've got our social media Rolodex, basically our email Rolodex. And I remember I was talking to a gentleman one time. It was around my email list was around 3,000 people. And I was like, oh, my list doesn't feel that big, or whatever we were talking about. I had that kind of a comment, and he's like, hold on a second. He's like, imagine going to a play, a musical, a theater in your local area. How many seats do you think they have in that? And he's like, a lot of them have 3,000 seats. Imagine that whole auditorium is full of 3,000 people that have agreed to hear from you. And I thought that's a great way of looking at it. So sometimes we don't think we have enough. I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah.
And we have to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. Like, no, you have a lot of people in your life who would be willing to help you. You just have to ask them directly, like, this is what I'm looking for. Do you know anyone?
Yeah. And then, have your stuff ready. Like this person, one of the people I reached out to, they were like, heck yeah, I do. Can you send me your information? So
Yes.
It's like, here's something she's been on recently that you can see how she speaks. And here's her media kit. And her speaker's kit for this one, but we have a media kit too.
Yeah.
But so, get your foundation pieces in order. So I love that that's where you start too, is getting the audience situated, making the strategy. What is something that I guess would be another form of the kryptonite that you see?
Yeah, one of the biggest things, and this isn't something necessarily people will say out loud, but I know that it's there. And they don't say, oh, I have a fear of sales. But to be fair, if you are someone who is here to make an impact, you're a purpose-driven leader, you maybe identify as like heart-centered person, quite often you have not had sales experience or training. It doesn't mean this is not across the board. It just happens. Like maybe you were a corporate executive in human resources, or you were a doctor. I've had medical doctors and attorneys. Guess what they don't learn in medical school or law school? Sales. There's no sales and marketing classes. And then all of a sudden you go, I want to go out there and speak, and I want to offer my consulting services or my, coaching services or whatever. And as a business owner, you do need to have that sales and marketing piece dialed in, which is why it's great, what us two getting together. It's like, yeah, you need to market yourself. And then you also need to figure out a way, how are you going to bring in the clients after you've marketed yourself so well?
Yeah.
And so they do go hand in hand. And a lot of times it doesn't mean you're not smart or capable, but you just don't know. I mean, I remember when I first, I started selling when I was, well, actually when I was really young, I was selling, but I was a sales, like I was in denial that I was in sales. And I remember like, oh no, I don't want to go in sales. I just want to teach. And I kept getting hired for sales jobs. And I'm like, okay, maybe I am a salesperson. and I am, but that's not what makes my heart sing. What makes my heart sing is I often say I'm a teacher disguised as a speaker. Like I really am here to share a message that's valuable to other people and help them share their message that's valuable for other people, because that's what's going to help our planet. We all can share our brilliance and our gifts. But if we keep that brilliance to ourselves, hence the speaker's kryptonite, hence the brilliance hoarding, we're not doing what we're meant to be doing. There are many of us who are called to be speakers, or it doesn't mean you're a speaker professionally. That's your full-time job, but you're called to share this message with a bigger audience. Not everybody gets called to do that. And that's totally fine. But if you're called, then we need to really slay that kryptonite. We need to figure out what's going on so that you can get out there and share the message.
And I will, I want to emphasize to women, yes, men too, but I mostly speak to women. You don't have to figure it out by yourself. No. It's really hard to actually do it by yourself.
Yes.
So it's like knowing what your lane is and where maybe your money is better spent by hiring somebody to help you knock it out faster and more powerfully. And please don't let AI take over for you.
So much. Yes, 100%. I have had a client. Yeah. If you think about it, like say you have a $10,000 service or offer, right? And you're just like, well, I'm just going to figure it out on my own and I'll just go do this thing and have no guidance or support. You don't actually, you're probably leaving tons of money on the table. You're probably going to take you a lot longer. So you're going to pay either way. You're going to pay by not attracting those clients quicker, by, maybe tripping over some success when you could have intentional success. Like, let's really get you in that fast lane, like set you up the right way so that you don't have to go through all the learning curves. There's going to be learning curves anytime you do anything brand new, and decisions you're going to need to make. Like with your branding, obviously you're going to need to make decisions. What's the vibe? What's the colors? What's the taglines? All the decisions that need to be made. But you're a leader and you could do that. And then deciding what your message is going to be on stage is also really important. And I don't know about you, Chrissy, do you find surprise that people really crave validation? And I think that's, I do. I like validation. And I have some of the most like successful, intelligent clients, and they're coming to me and confessing, I don't know if this, is this idea good? Is anyone going to want to hear this? What do you think about this point? And what do you think about like, what if I said it that way? Or is this story, what story should I use? Those are really good questions to have, because you're like, you need that confidence. Like, okay, let's take a look. Let's really intentionally decide what stories are going to be the best ones. What point is going to be the best point? What tips and tricks and all the strategies, what exercises are going to be the thing that moves the audience? And having that validation is so empowering, because then you can go like, oh, I'm going to knock it out of the park. Like, this is legit. This is a good thing. People are going to find value in that.
Yeah. And, even validating or invalidating something, meaning like we had somebody bring us their speaking stuff. It was all done by AI. And I was like, no, this is speaking to the what and the how, but not the transformation. I was like, no, we are majorly missing some of the important marks that are going to actually attract the audience. It's like, no, let's do this the human way.
Agreed. And that piece inside of you is your brilliance. Like you could have, let's say I have like 10 people lined up who've all taken the same coaching certification, for example, and they go, oh, I'm going to have AI make my talk for me. Like why you became a coach, your own unique imprint on and opinions and perspectives and transformations you've had for your clients. That's so unique to you. That's going to attract the people who you ideally want to help. That's different from the 9 other coaches standing in line. Like everyone's going to bring their own special sauce to that talk. So we don't want to make it like boring. And I'll say to them, I'm going, with all the kindness of my heart, we're not going to do that title. Or, yeah, no, that's overdone. Vanilla, plain. Nothing wrong with
Yeah.
vanilla, but it's not going to be sexy to a meeting organizer. And it's not really like special.
Well, exactly. Because what I keep seeing is that everything is looking the same, especially the posters. Please don't use the AI for your posters, but I'm, starting to see like somebody will send me something and I'm like, this could have been sent to me by 4 other people. Not, I don't look at this and immediately think, oh, this was sent by you.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm starting to see AI is, homogenous is the word that I've been throwing around. So, we've really got to lean into the human aspect, have AI check your stuff, have it, help you come up with ideas if possibly. But yeah.
I always say
Speaking,
it can be the sprinkles on top of the cupcake, but we need to make we need to make the cake.
yeah, exactly. I want to talk about getting paid. This is something a lot of women are scared to ask for, or they don't even know where to start. Do they have to start for free? And whereas, we have all seen the statistics that a man, yeah, it's $15,000.
Yeah.
And he has no hesitation. But a
I
woman would
know.
be like,
That's amazing.
500.
That's so true. I wish sometimes we could just like immediately adopt that type of thing. And I actually just gave that advice to my client. I said, for all the angst that you have about this, if a man, there are men speaking at this conference that she's getting tapped to speak at, I go, they would have no qualms at all about, maybe they do, and they just don't talk about it. But I think they would just say, this is my fee, and they wouldn't waste one little tear or lose one wink of sleep over it. And so I go, just like, let's just pretend you're a man for a second. Like, what's your answer? How would you want to ask for? So, when it comes to getting paid to speak, I have a lot of opinions that are probably, I don't know if to say controversial, but just different. It's about the person and what they're bringing to the table. And it's really, the question isn't paid or not paid or free or not or whatever. The question is this a monetizable opportunity? Like if you have services that are 5,000 and up, and you think you get 1 or 2 clients from that opportunity, that's probably going to be more than what would be offered as a speaking fee, certainly as a newer speaker. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but like sometimes people are losing sight of like, what's the actual point of what we're trying to do?
Yeah, it's a case by case basis on a lot of things, and sometimes I tell people, we actually just had one of our clients. She wrote a book and she kept forgetting to use it as leverage, and she had this company and they had a really small budget, but I said, well, have them buy your book. They probably have an education budget.
Yeah,
and she was like, oh yeah, so now she's getting paid more.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah. You can add things on, or if you're traveling somewhere, maybe they want to do a workshop while you're in town the following day or the night before, or, maybe you do some coaching sessions for some of their key people. Again, it depends on the scenario and what your skill set is. But some people aren't speaking to be full-time speakers. They're speaking as a platform for client retention. So again, depends on the point of what you're doing and what's your ultimate goal. And maybe clients isn't your goal. Maybe your goal is to be New York Times bestseller, or get a TV show, or again, we don't know what the goal is of that person, but all those things come into play when you're deciding what the speaking strategy is going to be. And you can do multiple strategies. I had one client who he was a paid speaker in certain scenarios. and because he spoke on leadership, and he was a consultant. So it was good for him to like, let's say, okay, get a paid speaking engagement, have the proximity to be hired by people in the room or the company who's hiring him as a consultant, to develop those relationships. And then also he could speak to anyone audiences because he had a lower ticket product that he sold that could be for any family, any mom, dad, person, man, woman, child, whatever. And so he would then speak for free at those scenarios and then offer that lower ticket product. So he was like, he had all three buckets, like check, check, check. So you could do that
Nice.
too.
Yeah, and sometimes I say, check out the balance of, is there a little bit of skin from everybody in the game? Or, is it an equal, like, are you going to get a case study out of it? Or, you're
Right.
going to get video out of it? You just got to get creative on figuring out how to make it a win-win for everyone. And then that way you
Agreed.
won't feel icky. They won't feel icky.
Right. And also, like, say if you're newer, well, then, yeah, you're going to take a couple more. Maybe something's not a perfect fit, but then you're practicing, and you don't really want your first speaking engagement to be in front of your absolute ideal room. You want
Yeah.
to have some dress rehearsals because you're going to learn from that experience. It's different. I always recommend practicing, but then when you're actually in front of live people, whether it's virtual or in person, your nerves are going to kick in a little bit the first couple of times, and you want to have some under your belt before you do that. It's very,
Yeah.
very important speaking engagement.
I love that. You said getting it under your belt. It's funny because I always get bright red when I speak, even though I'm not nervous.
Yeah.
I guess I get excited. And
Yeah.
so then I get bright red. And then I'm like, oh gosh, now they're looking at my bright red.
They probably don't even notice, you can feel it, and then it dissipates. Yeah. Our body doesn't lie, right? Like, and it's okay to have, sometimes people say, I had one client who she would shake, she would just get so nervous. Her body would shake and her voice would kind of shake a little bit. Now, the audience probably didn't even notice, but she noticed. She felt really insecure about it. And once we decided, okay, here's your talk, here's what we're going to do, here's how we can put the sales in place for you that doesn't feel salesy or pushy, because she was really worried about that. Then she was able to like speak nationally and speak multiple times a year and not have that deep sense of nervousness or insecurity happening.
Yeah,
It's a game changer.
I love that. Well, is there anything that we haven't covered that you were thinking, okay, I want to make sure that we talk about this? 'Cause
I
know we have
wanted,
2 weeks.
yeah, I definitely want to make sure if people want more resources on how to get speaking gigs, I've got a free resource that you can get 5 top tips to get more speaking gigs now. And that's free to any listener if this is your jam. And you could just go to getspeakinggigsnow.com/tips. Very
What a
easy.
great URL.
Yeah.
And I love that you add the word now.
Yeah, I know. Why? Well, the truth story is I wanted getspeakinggigs.com, but it was taken. So I was like, well, I guess we're going with now because that is usually when someone wants a speaking engagement right now.
That's awesome. Well, I am so happy that you joined me for this conversation. I feel like we could probably talk all day on this subject, but thank you so much for joining me, Leisa.
Oh, it's so fun. I know. I love all your thoughts and ideas too. Thanks for having me on your show.